I get a lot of questions about whether or not the suburbs are viable post SHTF. Hey Bear, what do you think about XYZ suburb? As if I know your particular suburb. I don't. I've answered this question on live streams on YouTube as well as on Patreon, pre-recorded content on Patreon. Just tobacco, simmer down, you hippies. And the short answer is not really, no. Now let me unpack that a little bit, because I know there's a lot of you that live in the suburbs and even some of you that still live in the cities. The knowledge that I share is firsthand, having lived in suburbs all across the United States of America, and also from being deployed to disaster zones post-event. Recently, I was in St. James Parish, Louisiana, after Hurricane Ida. Not the first suburb I've been in after a storm. Which begs the question, how do you define SHTF, or without rule of law, or the end of the world as we know it? Because many times after storms like this, you are in a world without rule of law. Law enforcement, EMS, and firefighters will not deploy because there's no commo, and they won't send their people potentially into harm's way if they can't offer backup for them, if there's no QRF, quick reaction force. If they can't talk to their people in the field, they don't send them to the field. Ergo, no rule of law. After the sun goes down, it gets a little medieval out there in the streets. The end of the world as we know it. How about no electricity, no running water, no flush toilets, no Wi-Fi, oh my gosh, no Wi-Fi, no illumination, no communication, no medical services. Hospitals, if they receive patients, they only receive critical patients in the ICU because they funnel all of the available resources, power, water, manpower to the ICU. They don't care about your boo-boos. In a lot of cases, they don't care about gunshot wounds or stabbings. Yeah, all because of a storm. And so if that's how you would define, or if those are facets of your personal SHTF or without rule of law, or the end of the world as we know it, WROL scenario, which, by the way, the acronyms are just stupid nowadays. I don't care what you call it. The coming unpleasantness is how I've begun to refer to what's coming down the pipe. But here's the deal. These suburbs are experiencing this post-storm. How do they get through it? Aid shows up from people like you that support people like us, so we can go there and support people like them, those that need it. Certainly not from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They are very, very bad at their jobs. But a lot of the times it's NGOs, non-governmental organizations, it's charities and foundations, and just regular old Americans that are trying to get out there and love their neighbor as their self and just help out. It is warm out here. I'm standing right in the sun. So, what if help doesn't arrive? Or what if the extent of the storm is so bad that I don't have the bandwidth to help you because I'm affected as well? And for our intents and purposes, the storm here is a man-made one. Do the suburbs become viable? Well, this truck here that I'm standing in front of was hooked to a trailer that had 4 tons of non-perishable food, fuel, personal hygiene, and water on it. And that stuff lasted, distributed amongst the one neighborhood that we were serving, 4 hours. 4 tons, 4 hours. A ton an hour of stuff. Now, maybe your ambition is, and probably a good ambition, that when the world ends, when things go pear-shaped, that you don't intend to feed everybody in your neighborhood. And to be clear, we were having to turn cars away because we're out of stuff. But let's just say a neighborhood with a couple hundred homes in it, roughly, a ton an hour. How much you got? I don't have that much. "24-hour period is 24 tons of stuff. Let's just cut that in half. We'll go half rations. Okay, 12 tons of stuff for a day. Well, no, Bear, I don't intend to feed all those people. Okay, well, sooner or later, they're going to realize that y'all staying fed, and they're not. And then what happens? There's no commo. The only electricity that you've got is coming from your generator that everybody and their brother can hear from a mile away. And desperate people start doing desperate things. There were people in southeastern Louisiana getting shot over gas cans. Let me repeat that. There were people in southeastern Louisiana a few days ago, as of the time of this recording, getting shot over gas cans. So desperate people do desperate things. Got it. You're a tactical badass. Got it. Good. Two-way shooting range, homie. Do you really want to shoot somebody over a 5-gallon can of gas? Ask yourself that question. Or a number 10 can of chicken or green beans or a sack of rice. Best way to avoid the problem is not be where the problem is, right? Population density matters. And in the suburbs, there's a lot of population. And there's a lot of very underprepared people. So depending on the size of your neighborhood, the size of your community, if you could get everybody there spun up, and I mean spun up on preparedness, putting some food back, putting some water back, which we all as preppers suck at water. I think I'm pretty good on water, and I'll tell you, I suck at it compared to what I should have. And I think I'm better off than most when it comes to water, and I still have a lot of room for improvement. So food, near term, working pantry in the kitchen, couple weeks worth. Mid-term, prepper pantry, 3 to 6 months worth. Long-term storage, a year or more. And then agriculture. Can you produce food? My buddy Squid, his plan was to arm his neighbors with seeds, which is the term that Christian at the Ice Age Farmer came up with. Arm your neighbor with seeds. Plant every green space you can. I think that's a great idea. You're 6 months out from that. How are you going to make it the next 6 months? A ton of stuff per hour. We went through 7 pallets of water. 7 pallets of water in a day. In a day. Well, that was because of the storm. We're talking about SHTF, homeboy. So can you control your little fiefdom? Can you set apart? Can you sanctify? Can you make holy? Oh, look at that, translated 3 different times for you. Your little fiefdom away from everybody else who's behaving badly. It's a real eye-opener. That's why I encourage you all to get involved with Grindstone Ministries and come deploy with us. Bring your bug-out bag. Live out of your bug-out bag. There's good practice right there. And then observe. See the way people behave. See what's a priority and what isn't. Do a compare-contrast in the neighborhood you're in versus the neighborhood you live in. you know, going to Louisiana, operating there and coming back. We got 3 flat tires, screws and nails all over the place. That's on the roads. That's not even getting off the road. But when every roof in the county has been damaged and storm debris is everywhere, and half of the buildings, you know what, it's not half. A quarter of the buildings have structural damage with the front or the side ripped off of them. You know what goes flying? Fasteners, and they end up in your tire. How many tire patch kits you got and plugs? How many spares have you got? Luckily, the Father was looking out for us. We had 2 spares. And by the time we needed a 3rd, we were 8 miles from a tire shop that just happened, praise the Father, to have what we needed on the shelf. You consume a lot of stuff. And the more people you add to the equation, the more you're going to consume. And if you're not going to let them play in your sandbox post-event, they're going to get enough of their friends to come kick your sandcastle over and make your sandbox their sandbox. And then what happens? So the long-term viability of the suburbs for me is a no. The short-term to intermediate term is only if A, you're incredibly well-stocked in a small neighborhood full of tight-knit people, or B, there's outside influence. And like I said, I'm not standing in the breadline. I don't want your government cheese because I don't want to have to dance to the tune that you're going to be singing in order to give me that bread. I'm not doing it. So just some hard data points for you from our initial, not the last, our initial deployment to Hurricane Ida in southeastern Louisiana. Are the suburbs viable? Hell, we're the ones going there to assist, and they're barely viable for us. We have to pack in everything we need, including fuel and food and water and ice and security and commo and recon. Yeah, do your recon. How's your area study coming, by the way? And manpower and labor and shelter and consumables, just to be able to go assist. If it's barely viable for me, and I'm the one operating from a position of strength, my answer to you is no, it's not viable for you long term. I get a lot of pushback because I tell y'all the straight facts as I understand them. I know a lot of y'all live in the suburbs and are trying to figure out a way to serve 2 masters. How do I stay here in the suburbs and not piss my wife off, or not piss my husband off, or not make my kids mad that we got to move school, or not lose my job, or whatever, and also be prepared? The question is, be prepared for what? Because something of what most would say, biblical proportions. Homie, this was a storm. It wasn't biblical proportions. It wasn't national. It wasn't international. It was regional ? And without outside influence, a lot of those people would be in a very, very bad position. As would you or I if we were there too. And this is by no means an indictment of the people who were there. Bad stuff happens to good people. It's just a talking point. It's an opportunity to learn. And so you'll stay where you are because you've convinced yourself that you're doing enough to be okay there. And I'm telling you, unless you're incredibly well-stocked and well-trained in a small suburban neighborhood filled with like-minded people that you coordinate and train with, no, they're not viable. Sorry. Come out of her, my people, lest you partake of her sins and receive of her plagues. Shalom, y'all.